just want to talk about beat matching. Beat matching itself, obviously, is the matching of the beats on the two tracks, the one that's playing and the one that you want to bring in. Beat mixing is then mixing those two tracks together using the DJ mixer. Obviously you'll match the tempos using the slider that's down on the right, but first of all you need to get your release points right. Most people tend to get the idea of beat mixing and mixing the two tracks together in a sort of what we call a dyslexic method. When after they first get their first set of decks, they tend to nod their head, just nod the head and tap the foot. It's good to do that anyway, but that's generally all what they tend to do, and they tend to kind of release the tracks and when they feel that the track's going to start off again. And I'm not saying that they haven't released it at a correct point in time. They usually have. But they're not knowing musically what they're supposed to be matching, and they're kind of moving the pitch up and down in a kind of a paranoid state, not knowing, is it going to run out of time? Let's make an adjustment here. Let's make an adjustment there. When they're not necessarily needing to be doing that, or letting a mix rushing a mix because they're scared that it's going to run out of time. When really musically they don't know what it is they're supposed to be matching. The actual beat themselves, it's supposed to be the first beat of the first bar, what you're concentrating on, matching between the two tracks. Dance music itself as a whole, let alone house music, is basically made, there will be exceptions, but it's basically 99% in 4/4 time. And what that relates to is 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4, 3 2 3 4, 4 2 3 4, and back 1 2 3, and then that'll loop over again and again and again. And basic beat matching is releasing two tracks so they're starting in sync at the same point on those 4-bar loops. The way we do that is by having the track that we're going to bring in, which is obviously set in our cue in our headphones on our ear, to the first point of the first bar. Usually it's at the beginning of the track. It doesn't have to be. You could shuttle it forward to the start of a new phrase section, and have the first beat of the first bar there. And then we listen to the track that's playing out through the speakers. That's why you usually see a DJ who's got one headphone off with this ear exposed. He's listening to the track which is playing, and we can then count musically, because we now know our 4/4 time loops. We can now count the 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4, 3 2 3 4, 4 2 3 4, and release. And we can release that track right on time of the 4/4 loops. They're both now going in sync. And now we might need to speed up or slow down the track that we've released by monitoring in our headphones before we open the faders to get it exactly right. By down on the right hand side, and on the right hand side now of the CDJs, you might have it it might be on the left hand side if you've got a different manufacturer decided to have a different design, but usually on the right hand side you've got your pitch adjust or your tempo adjust slider, and you can adjust that back or forward, down or up, should we say, to speed the track down or to speed it up. Again, usually bringing the fader towards you will speed it up, and pushing it away will slow the track down. But some manufacturers, to be different, might have swapped that around, the opposite way around. In the old days, it used to be just called a pitch adjust, because it adjusts the pitch of the track as well as the tempo itself. So the faster you went, the more higher pitch, like on Helium, the track went. The slower you went, the slurred down and went really slow in pitch, especially if it was a vocal. You can tell the difference there more. Nowadays you've got what they call tempo lock or master tempo or key lock. What that does is keeps the track's key at its original state, so there's no slurring or helium voices as you get faster. But that generally tends to not work quite as well as it should as it's supposed to be implemented. So you generally tend to find yourself switching that off anyway. Generally then what happens is they call it a tempo adjust nowadays because of that function, but when you turn it off, obviously it works just the same as it did with the older pitch adjust, and then you'll have to watch out for that. Because of that, really, when you're choosing your two tracks to mix together, you want them to be within a reasonable BPM range. You don't want to say be mixing something 128 BPM with something 136 BPM, because when you've sped it up, it's going to sound like it's on helium and it's going ridiculously fast, and it just sounds stupid. So you know, a track that's 126 BPM, say, with a track that's 128 BPM range, that should be fine. Obviously, if you go, we'll get more into harmony and tracks keys and that later on. But as a general rule, if you've got to go more than +3% or back -3% on the pitch adjust, the track's key will start to shift. Obviously, that means that it will be in a different key. So if certain tracks with certain keys fit better than others, and if you thought that you was going to mix a track of a certain key that goes well with another one, if you have to go past that 3% or either way, or speed it up past that 3%, then you're not going to be getting those original keys that you thought you were going to be getting. So it won't sound, but the mix itself probably won't sound as well as you'd hoped. But yeah, I'll cover my method of finding the optimum pitch a bit later on. I will just go over the fact that the pitch sliders themselves, or the pitch adjust, have what we call a pitch accuracy resolution. That's down to, they do that down to a decimal point. The more decimal points on the resolution, the more accurate the pitch resolution can be. So most common CD players use a 0.0% pitch that goes 0.01, 0.02, 0.03, all the way, and then it will go up to 1.0, 1.2, or 1.3%, etc. It's just got the 2 decimal points. That's generally okay for most modern music that's built in or arranged in a DAW, because most of the tracks are arranged to a straight BPM, 128.00 BPM, 127.00 BPM, etc. And that pitch resolution allows you to make accurate enough mixes off the back of that. Occasionally someone will produce a track in a DAW and the track has been produced at 128.2 or 128.03, something ridiculous like that, and then that offset on there then might mean that you'll have to make adjustments as you go, a little bit later on in the mix, to keep that in sync. If you're using the better pitch resolution like the Pioneer and Denon decks have now, they're not an extra decimal point on there, some 0.005% accuracy, but now we've got the 0.002% accuracy, which is even better. And even on that, now even those tracks with the offset, the 0.3, 0.5, etc. in offset, you should be able to lock them down with that pitch accuracy for a good amount of time, and you won't need to keep making adjustments. Obviously, if you've got the practice in and you're very good at matching the beats in the first place, because obviously if you're wrong, if you're an increment out and you're wrong, you're almost there, you'll get the track stay in sync really nicely for a fairly long period of time, but then it'll start to run out of sync again because you have got it not dead on, and you'll have to make an adjustment anyway. So however good you are will depend on how long you don't have to make any adjustments, you keep your tracks in sync, but also the pitch resolution to a degree will as well. When it comes to turntables, the older turntables like the 1210 Mark IIs use an analog direct drive system with a variable resistor on the slider, and by highering and lowering the voltage, it gradually sped up and slowed down the motor to adjust the tempo, and that's a very fine way of speeding up and slowing down the tempo. And that was the reason why that was a lot more accurate. You see, that was a lot more like the new 0.002% percentage on the newer, more expensive, usually CDJs. That was a big reason why a lot of people found it hard to gravitate towards CDJs, because the pitch wasn't as accurate as it was on the turntable, and the feel of using the pitch felt a little bit different because it was more coarse on those newer CDJs than it was on the turntable. Some of the newer digital turntables that have a digital pitch will use a similar situation as a CDJ, and the problem there is that of course that depends of course on, the same with the CDJ, just how accurate or coarse that turntable's pitch slider is, and that'll affect it in the same way as it would with the CDJ on how accurate or not as accurate as it is there, which will cause it to run out of time. Obviously you'll need to make adjustments if it's not as accurate as an older turntable that you might be used to using. That's basically it. That's the basics behind matching and beat mixing, is the 4/4 loops. Dance music itself is generally phrased in 8 and 16 bar sections or beat sections, and what generally tends to happen at the end of those 8 bar sections, and when the new section starts, a new instrument is introduced, or something new happens, or there's a start of a new section or a new phrase completely, or instruments even are taken out of the mix and taken away, ready for a track to break down. And when it comes to more advanced beat matching or beat mixing, we tend to employ what we call phrasing, which is setting the track in motion. Of course they'll still be in there, released on their 4/4 loops, but at the start of an 8 bar or 16 bar phrase on both tracks. And then, but what tends to happen then is both tracks tend to evolve musically properly in time. So when another track's instruments, say on its outro, are being taken away, the tracks that you're mixing in at the same point in time will have something new happen, like a new instrument will come in on that one. So everything evolves in the mix as it should do musically at the same point in time, and we can jigsaw those two pieces of music together in that fashion, and it all sounds a lot nicer than just the basic at 4/4 using the 4/4 loops. I'll go into that, and I'll show it a little bit more in depth with the phrasing a bit later on. And like I said before, another thing when it comes to mixing is you tend to get tracks that will work together well and tracks that don't work together well. That's generally down to the key that the tracks are produced in or written in, and some keys work better with other keys. We'll get more into that later on, but as you're beat mixing, you might find yourself frustrated as you're practicing. Well, I've got this, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I've got this all wrong, but it sounds terrible when I'm opening the crossfader. Well, that's probably due to the fact that the two tracks aren't a good match harmonically. Even if you're using just the beats, which can be a good way of moving between two tracks that aren't in a compatible key anyway. But these days people tend to tune the kick drums to a key of the track that the track's in, so it sounds better with the bass, etc. And then you tend to still have the two tracks, even if you're mixing between the percussion and drum sections, they still sound bad. So all you need to concentrate on is those first beats, or the downbeat or kick drum on each track when beat matching. Don't worry about anything else. All the other hits will fall where they're supposed to fall. When people produce tracks these days, and they produce a drum pattern, they can pull and push certain hits out of alignment to create a swing or a groove on those drums. But the kick drum, that first beat, the 1 2 3 4, the 2 2 3 4, the 3 2 3 4, that generally stands static where it is. I say generally, there'll probably be somebody will mess around with it out there, but it should stay static to its time signature, that first kick drum in the beat. And as you get more closer to matching the tempo, you might want to, instead of just concentrating on every 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2, just concentrate on the first one at the start of the first bar on each track, and just listen to that one then, and make ever such minor adjustments, and that can also help. The more accurate you get with locking it down. But that's all for now. I'll cover a bit more, go a bit more in depth with the next few videos.